Where's my drug dealer man to split his sandwich with me? I realized when watching the opening advisory of this episode that I forgot to put one of those on my last video, so be warned, this episode does include references to substance abuse and sexual abuse. Viewer discretion advised. Episode 2 is called Out of Touch. Immediately we jump right back into where we left off last episode. Nate is at death's door, very close to heaven, and they definitely will close the door on him. While in the hospital, Nate is in a coma and he fantasizes about Cassie to the tune of a Noah Cyrus and Lil Xan song called Live or Die, which I had no idea they even had a song together. If you've never read anything about the way they broke up, please look it up. It's the funniest thing. Anyways, Nate has convinced himself that he loves Cassie and that she's perfect for him and that he will be an incredible father to her children, a much better father than his ever was. If for some reason you don't remember, Nate's father, Cal, is very abusive and he has sex with minors. And in this fantasy, which is more like a nightmare, Nate envisions Cal harassing Cassie while she's pregnant with his child. And it works really well, just as another hint that Nate will always carry around some form of his father within him, even when he wishes that his father would drop dead. In this fantasy that he has about Cassie, which by the way has so much nudity for a character that's supposed to be 17 years old, there are also flashes of Jules. It happens very quickly and you're not supposed to notice it. Oh, well, you are supposed to notice it, but if you're not paying attention, then you won't. Clearly, he's still being affected by his feelings for Jules from the previous season. Rue is narrating and she calls our attention back to the fact that Maddie took the disc that showed Cal Jacobs committing statutory rape with Jules, meaning Maddie carries evidence that could incriminate Cal. Nate is aware of this and he decides that he can't move forward with Cassie as long as Maddie is still holding on to this. This is incredibly important for the rest of the episode. At his bedside in the hospital, Cal prays for Nate to get better as he suddenly seizes and starts bashing his head against the hospital bed, which is a very obvious callback to when Nate was obsessively hitting his head on the ground when Cal was pinning him down in the last season. As Nate seizes, he imagines Cassie giving birth to his child, and as he comes to, he is flooded with, you guessed it, Rue and Jules have a little smoochy smooch in the hallways, and Rue is obviously very happy. She's gotten exactly what she wanted until she sees Elliot walking in their direction. Elliot, who conveniently knows something that Jules doesn't. Actually, he knows two things. The first is that he knows Rue is not clean. The second is that he knows he's been hanging out with Rue behind Jules' back. Well, not necessarily behind her back, but Rue hasn't told Jules that they've been hanging. Rue completely blanks when she's introducing him, and then Elliot mentions offhand that he had no idea Rue was seeing anyone. This causes Jules to leave, and as she's turning, tears form in her eyes. Hunter Schafer is incredible in this scene. It seems like a very small thing to be crying about, yet it's entirely believable. She's sad that her girlfriend is hiding something from her. Jules runs into the bathroom and Cassie is there. Cassie has been depressed lately. I doubt it's the fact that she broke up with McKay, or maybe the fact that she got pregnant when she was 16 years old, or maybe it's about the fact that she cheated with her best friend's boyfriend, or maybe it's because she's single and desperately craves love. But you know what? I'm sure none of those things have anything to do with it. Maddie is beginning to feel very conflicted about breaking up with Nate, and he sends her a text while in the hospital that says, "I love you always," in a very obvious attempt to manipulate her, and it works. Also, Maddie has the absolute best one-liners of this show. Talking about Nate, she says, "I know he's a horrible person, but I'm torn." Maddie needs money, so she tries donating her eggs at first, but then she decides that she'll babysit this kid named Theo. Now, Theo's parents are rich, and Theo's mother has rich clothing in her closet. Maddie secretly enjoys trying on these richy rich clothes while the mother is out. When Theo's mother gets back, she and Maddie have a really interesting moment that I might be reading too much into, although I don't think I am. Maddie unzips her dress and the two have a really interesting look between them. The shot itself is very intimate, and just judging by the way these two actors act in this scene, I am really getting a strong sense that the director told them that it is a moment of attraction. Maddie talks to Kat in the bathroom, and I really love how, well, with the exception of Cassie, all of the girls seem to be getting along this season. Kat thinks that Ethan is sweet, emphasis on the sweet. She has a sex fantasy because it's Kat. She has a sex fantasy about Ethan getting killed by a Dothraki warrior, which, if you're not familiar with Game of Thrones, it's just like this shirtless, ponytailed man who then takes her as her sex prisoner. The Dothraki part's not important. The most important part is that she fantasizes about Ethan being killed. Kat's storylines really do not disappoint those who love the bizarre. That being said, it definitely seems like just the beginning of what will be a much worse problem that has absolutely everything to do with her taking in too much pornography and being a cam girl at such a young age. In this scene, you're definitely meant to feel weird about chuckling because there are funny moments, but it's an uncomfortable funny. Nate comes home from the hospital and his mother actually suggests that he probably deserved it. She's right. Cal, however, is on a mission to find the truth because now I guess he cares about his son. Cassie calls Nate, who tells her that they'll meet up later at some point. Cassie's mental state gets even worse as a montage of Maddie brutalizing and beating up people who have wronged her in the past. There's just something somewhat disturbing about a young girl slamming another young girl's head into a locker repeatedly. Jules confronts Rue about Elliot, saying that it's obvious Rue has a crush on him. Rue denies it but then apologizes, and Jules runs off. Elliot overhears and suggests they do drugs because why would she do anything else on this show? And also, it was at this moment that I realized Elliot is played by Dominic Fike. His song 3 Nights was on my playlist for like half a year. Faye, who is the girlfriend from the last episode who was injecting heroin into her vagina, she's staying with Fez in Ashtray because she is on the run from the law after having pushed a hotel manager off of a balcony. What wonderful company these people keep. And Fez agrees to take her in because he doesn't want the cops sniffing around her boyfriend, who is his direct line to Lori, who's the main drug woman lord. Fez puts on his strict boy hat and he tells her not to touch anything and not to talk to Ashtray, and then he shows a little bit of humanity when he asks her if she'd like to have a bite of a sandwich. At her home, Cassie steps into the dining room from hell to find that Cal has been questioning Lexi and her mother. Cal wants to know who beat up Nate, and it's very obvious that Lexi is not going to give up Fez. Cassie, however, very quickly sells out Fez when Cal threatens to get higher people involved. People who will read her text messages. People who will read her text messages to Nate. Lexi and Cassie fight, and Lexi is upset that Cassie was so quick to give up Fez. Then we get a little bit about Lexi, which is a very good thing because we don't know much about her from last season. All we know is that she's been a pretty good friend to Rue, and Rue has not been the same back. So Lexi felt seen at the party when she was talking to Fez. She explains that people her age tend not to care about her or listen to her. It's very obvious that she likes Fez. Who doesn't, am I right? But she's conflicted, for Nate nearly dying at the hand of Fez type reasons. Lexi feels passive, which is when we learn that she blames herself for Rue overdosing. She feels that she could have told somebody that Rue had such a serious problem. She decides that she's going to take a step away from being passive, and she rides her bike to Fez's convenience store. As Lexi pulls into the parking lot, the camera pans over to Cal, who's waiting in his car, watching everything happen, and he pulls a gun out of his glove box. Now, when I first watched this, I thought that he was pulling it out to shoot Lexi, and I thought, damn, just because she didn't tell you? But he doesn't. He doesn't shoot Lexi, don't worry. I just completely forgot that Fez had a convenience store. Rue hangs out with Elliot when she could be at dinner with Jules. She smokes some weed, does a few lines before going into her Narcotics Anonymous meeting. At home, Kat gets another fantasy, but this time it's closer to a nightmare. She's swarmed by models and influencers telling her that she should love herself, all while Kat screams that she hates herself. She, Ethan, Jules, and Maddie go bowling because Kat told Ethan that that's where she was in order to get out of hanging out with him. This is the second time this episode that somebody who claims to love their partner has lied in order to get out of spending time with them. Nate and Cassie meet in their car, they kiss, and they've been caught, although they don't know it, by Rue, who is passing by on her bike. Maddie calls Nate first, he doesn't pick up, and then she immediately calls Cassie, who doesn't pick up, which brings the third instance, somebody's lying. Just as a reminder, this episode is called Out of Touch. Elliot's sister implies that he's into Rue, which he denies, although he doesn't really deny it. He says, we're just friends, and then he gives a smile that hints he's into her. Nate doesn't tell Cassie where he's taking her, and once again it feels like a horror movie. He pulls into some kind of construction site to tell her that he's ending whatever it is they have together. Cassie, who is distraught, runs from the car and into this fun house of safety hazards. For a second you might actually think, finally, run Cassie, run far away from Nate. But then you remember this is Cassie we're talking about, and she wants him to follow her, which is exactly what he does. He starts to go down on her, and as his face is literally in her crotch, he says, "How can you ever face Maddie again?" Jesus. Nate can claim that Cassie has the power in this situation, but they both know that that is not true. Cassie's a shitty friend, yes, but she's clearly not well. She's clearly going through a lot, and while that's not an excuse to do what she's done to Maddie, it does mean that she's the perfect target for somebody like Nate. Lexi walks into Fez's convenience store and she flashes this crazy big smile at him. Fez calls her by her full name, and he's clearly very excited to see her. You know, the intellectual quiet girl and the hardened criminal who also respects women is such a corny trope, so why do I still fall for it every time? Lexi's face immediately deflates when she sees Faye standing behind him because she assumes that they're together. She then backs out of whatever plan she had made before and explains that she's just there to buy a drink, which makes Fez's face deflate. He asks her if she needs any help finding anything, and he offers her help anyway when she says no, and this man is down bad for Lexi Howard until Cal Jacobs shows up to fuck up this precious Wattpad story. What follows next is the most tense 2.5 minutes of the entire episode. It's also a really perfect example of my favorite kind of dialogue within a scene. It is the perfect example of dramatic irony by the Greek tragedy definition, when the full significance of a character's words or actions are clear to the audience or reader, but unknown to the other characters within the scene. Cal asks several questions that are seemingly harmless. Questions like, "Where's the gum? Is this your store? Do your parents own this store?" And anybody who started watching this show at this particular scene, they would be completely lost. And it would just be the most mundane, melodramatic 2 minutes of an HBO show they've ever seen. But to the rest of the viewers, we all know exactly what he means when he says, "Is this your store?" What he's really saying is, you are the one who beat up my son. You are at my mercy because I have a gun and you don't know it. You have no idea how many scripts I've read that opt for that kind of dialogue. They always go for the obvious declarations, and it just doesn't pay off as well as a scene like this does. Anyways, Ashtray pulls a gun out of a cereal box, which is a really great way to remind you what kind of kid Ashtray is. The kind who hides handguns in his cereal. I just realized that I never even wrapped up the bit in the convenience store. Cal reaches into his pocket as if he's gonna take out a gun, but then he doesn't. He just ends up taking out a $20 bill and paying for the gum, I guess. Ashtray backs off with his gun, and really, it's just a whole thing to fuck with Fez. And he leaves by just saying that he's a concerned father. Rue is clearly very high when she makes it to her meeting, and her sponsor, Ali, watches on. He drives Rue home and introduces himself to her mother, as Rue prays that he doesn't tell her mother that she's not clean. When her mother asks how she's doing in the program, as if she can't tell from Rue's obvious state of cocaine-induced fidgeting, Ali just simply says that she has a long way to go. Rue's mom makes a comment that her sponsor is handsome, and who knows if that will develop. Back to the bowling group, Maddie explains to Jules that she doesn't think a love without darkness will work for her, which might be foreshadowing, although it's really just a repeat of what we learned about her last season. Literally, that was all she did last season, was toxic love. So this scene definitely, at least to me, feels out of place. And then again, as they're leaving, she tells Jules that she wants to get back together with Nate. Jules wishes that Maddie will see herself the way the rest of the world does, which is a very sweet sentiment. Definitely not the most realistic thing to say, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe all of my friends have never said that to me because they're shitty friends. Or maybe I've just never been on the precipice of doing something so absolutely fucking stupid as getting back together with Nate Jacobs. Speaking of the Jacobs, back at home, Nate is with Cal, and he opens with the very casual line of, "Remember that classmate of mine that you fucked?" Oh, McSteamy's face when he says this. R.I.P. Mark Sloan. Nate tells his dad to back off of Fez because they have the disc. They have proof that could put Cal away for a very long time. And then the episode ends. I don't know what it is about this season, but I'm definitely enjoying it more than the last one. I know it's only been 2 episodes, so we'll see if that holds. Really, I think once you let go of any opinions on whether or not this is an accurate portrayal of high school, it's a much easier watch. Personally, this was not my experience in high school, but that's not to say that it wasn't the experience of others. After all, I did grow up in a very small town in Texas. Either way, they're all played by actors in their 20s, by very, very beautiful adults in their 20s, so you can let the reality slip a little bit. But yeah, I really liked this episode, and I'd say my biggest complaint was that Fez and Lexi spent a whole of 2 minutes together, if even that. If you excuse me, I'm gonna go write my Wattpad fanfic of Fez and Lexi. See you next week.